Hello and welcome to yet another tutorial by Davies Media Design. My name is Michael Davies, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to create a simple vector portrait using Inkscape. And yes, I will be showing you how to do the shading for this tutorial. I'll be using Inkscape 1.0, which is the latest version of Inkscape at the time of this tutorial. Before I get into that, don't forget to check out my website at daviesmediadesign.com. As always, I have tons of Inkscape and GIMP tutorials on here, as well as my GIMP book of layers and free software help articles, so definitely check that out. And you can get more with a premium membership to Davies Media Design, and I'll include a link to this as well as all the relevant links from this tutorial in the description of the video. So I'll be basing this vector portrait off of a photo, and this is the photo I'll be using. Click the free download, and I went with the large option here. So choose that and click free download. So here is the final portrait, and I used a simple color palette for this. I will include a link to the palette in the description of this video, and I'll also put out a tutorial on how to import custom palettes into Inkscape. But for starters, let's open up a new composition. So I'll go to File, New. I'll stick with the default values for the most part, but I do want to edit something. So I'll go to File, Document Properties, and I just want to change this so that the border shows on top of my vector drawing and so that there's no border shadow, and I'll exit out of here. So here's my canvas. Now I'll open up my photo I want to use. So here's the folder where this photo is located. I'll click and drag this into Inkscape. I'm going to go with Link, Default Import Resolution, and Blocky so that this is as optimized as possible, and I'll click OK. That'll help with the performance of Inkscape. So once this document is inside of our composition, I'm just going to use the transform handles. So hold Control and Shift so that it drags with the same aspect ratio and from the center. And then I'm just going to click and drag this with my select tool until it's pretty close to the center here of my image. And then I'm going to click on this again to bring up my rotation handles. And I'm just going to rotate this until her face is pretty straight because her head is tilted to the side a bit. Let's go with about right there. We can center this up a bit better, like so. So bring up your layers panel if you don't have it brought up already. So you can use Shift-Control-L to bring this up, or go to Layer, Layers. Right now I'm on layer 1. I'm going to click on this and rename it Image, hit the Enter key, and then click this little lock icon to lock it, and I'll hold Control zoom in. Next I'm going to place a center guide, so I'm just going to drag a guide from my rulers and drop it on the subject's face as close to center as possible. Now I'll start with my first major elements, so I'm going to come over here and click to create a new layer, and I'll name this Face Outline and hit the Enter key. So we're going to outline the face. I'll hold Control, zoom in, hit the B key to grab my Paths tool or my Bezier Curves tool. And again, hold Control, use the mouse wheel to zoom in. It's a bit hard to see the outline of her face, but I'll do the best I can and just click and drag to create a curved segment here. And I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible, so as little nodes as I possibly can. And once I reach this last node here, I'm going to shift and drag my mouse in. So by holding shift, it allows me to only edit a single handle. And then I'm going to go along the guide here. I can always hold Control and use my mouse wheel to zoom out. And I'll come up top here to around right here and click to create a node. And then I'm going to just click on this first node here and drag it upwards. And that's going to create a nice arc. And I'll release. If you want to be able to see that outline, you can always come over here and just shift click on the white color, and now we can see the outline better. We will change that color up eventually, but let's hold Control, zoom in. Now I just need to do the ear real quick, so I'm going to click with my Path tool, and I can't really see the ear, so I'm going to have to make some of this up, which is fine. I'm just going to try to make this look normal. I'm going to undo that one. So I'll hold shift and bring this one in a bit, that handle there, and we'll come up top here and just connect that. So again, I can shift click if I want to make that white. Once we have the ear and the main face outline, we can move on to the next part, which is going to be the more detailed portions of the face. So I'll click to create a new layer, and we'll name this Face Elements. Hit the Enter key. Let's lock the face outline layer for now. Grab the Select tool, and I'll use the spacebar to move around a bit. And I'll hit the B key once again to grab my Bezier Curves tool. Let's work on the sunglasses here. So we're going to create some curves, and again, try to create as little nodes as possible. And I'll just click to create a union here and drag the handle to create a curve. So there is the sunglasses. Hold Control, we'll move on to the nostril here. And the goal of this is to make this as simple as possible while still being able to tell that this is a person, obviously. Let me click on the black here and then shift click on the X to get rid of the stroke. So I'm only going to do a couple of details in the face. Next, let's work on the lip, the one half of the lips. And I'll hit Control Z. I'll make sure for this portion, I'll click and drag and then hold the Shift key to bring this handle back in. And that allows me to come over here and create this portion, hold the Shift key, bring that handle back in, and then we're just going to connect that. And then for the middle portion of the lips, we're just going to quickly create some curves here. So click and drag, hold Shift to bring it back in. And then we're going to connect that. So for this one, we'll click to fill it with white and then Shift click to get rid of the stroke. Hold Control and zoom out. Now that we have all of the main elements of the face, we're going to duplicate them and then flip them over to the other side so we have a nice symmetrical looking portrait. We'll start with the face elements layer. Since we're already here, I'll grab my Select tool. And if you have one object selected, you can hit Control A. That will select everything else. Hit Control D to duplicate it. And we'll just click on this to bring up these transform handles, the rotate handles. Hold Control, zoom in. You'll notice there's a little plus icon here. You can drag that over to change the point at which this is going to flip. So basically we want to drag this little plus until it perfectly aligns with the guide, like so. Once it aligns, we'll hit the H key and that will flip everything over. And now we'll lock that in place and unlock the face outline. So we'll click on this and we'll shift click on the ear as well. Control D to duplicate. So I'll click on these shapes again to bring up the transform handles until I can see the plus icon. And once again, I'm just going to drag this over. So hold Control, zoom in. So that looks pretty close there, but let's try to get it exact. Hold Control, zoom out. Hit the H key and that will flip everything over. So now everything has been mirrored over. And I'll click off of this. Now let's try to join these objects together. So I'm going to shift click on these two large portions that make up the face. And I'll go to Path, Union. If you still have a seam going on down the middle of the face like I do, you can grab the Edit Paths by Nodes tool and just click on this center segment here. And then come over here and click on this Delete Segment Between Two Nodes button. And that should get rid of that. So let's grab the Select tool again. We're going to lock the face outline layer, come back to the face elements and unlock it. And now let's click on the lips. So we'll shift click on both sides, go to Path, Union. So we have a seam here once again. So I'll grab my Edit Paths by Nodes tool. We'll click on this middle segment and we'll click on that icon to delete it. Hold Control, zoom out. And I'll grab my Select tool again and just click off of that. So for this portion, I'm going to fill everything in with the color I want to use. That way I can move on with the rest of the tutorial and easily be able to spot where everything is. So for this tutorial, I created a custom palette and I do have a tutorial on how to do that. I'll also link the custom palette I'm using to this tutorial. But here is the custom palette here. I can access it from this little triangle menu here. And now what I'll do is I'll start by clicking on the face and let me make sure that's unlocked. So I'll click on that face layer. I'm just going to click with this brown color. That's the main color I want to use for the skin. I'm going to go to my fill and stroke dialog, which you can access via Shift Control F. And I'm just going to lighten this up. I think it's a bit too dark. Maybe like so. You can also adjust. And by the way, I am on the HSL tab here. And so that color looks pretty good. So now I'll shift click on the ears and grab the eyedropper tool and fill that in. And I'll shift click to get rid of the stroke. So we'll do the same thing, grab the select tool, select the main face, shift click to get rid of the stroke. There will pretty much be no strokes in the final design. So now let's get to the sunglasses here, so I can shift click on both of these. I'll go with an orange color and then shift click to get rid of the stroke there. I'll also come over to the lips and let's go with this pinkish color, shift click to get rid of the stroke. And the nostrils, I'll keep that black color. And I do need to add a bridge between the glasses, so I'll hold Control, zoom in. Let's come over to our layers, make sure we are on the face elements layer, grab the rectangle tool. I'm just going to quickly draw a rectangle here. Make sure this is filled in with orange. And it is pretty close to center aligned here with the guide. So now I'm going to go to Path, Object to Path, and then grab my Edit Paths by Nodes tool. I'm going to click on the bottom right node, shift click on the bottom left, and I'm going to convert these nodes to curves. And I'll click and drag a guide from the rulers, and then just drag the handles until they snap to that same point there. That way this is nice and even. Then I can grab my select tool and just drag that guide off, and now we have a bridge between the glasses there. You can always adjust the size of that if you want. All right, now let's move on to the hair as well as the neck and the shirt. So we're gonna add all these elements to our portrait. Let's start with the hair. So let's come over here to the bottom layer, the image layer, create a new layer, and I'll just name this hair and click add. And I'll come over here and grab my polygon and star tool. I have the corners set to 30 and the spoke ratio set to 0.970. You'll see what I'm doing here in a second, but I'm going to click and drag this, and that's going to create some hair like so, and release. I'll change the color of this to a dark purple for now. And right now these are looking pretty jagged. They look like Lisa Simpson hair or something, so I'm going to smooth them out. So I'll go to Path, Object to Path, grab my Edit Paths by Nodes tool. I'll hit Control A to select all the nodes. And then I'll come up top here and click to make the selected node smooth. And now I can click off of these and you'll see now she has some nice wavy hair. And we're going to add some detail to the hair later. But now what I'll do is come over and create another new layer. I'm going to name this one neck, and I'll click add. And I'm going to hide the hair layer for now. So working just on the neck layer, let's come over and grab the paths tool from the toolbox, hold Control, zoom in. So I want to mimic pretty much her body shape here. I don't want to change anything. So I'm going to try to mimic that as best I can, remembering that the image isn't perfectly straight, so I don't want to directly trace that part. But I want the proportions to be mostly the same. So you'll see I'm just mostly creating straight lines. I'll click and drag to create a slight curve here. Shift and bring this in. And then I can click and drag to create the shoulder here. Again, I'm not trying to perfectly follow the shoulder because it's not a totally straight image. Hold Control, zoom out with my mouse wheel, and go to about right here. Hold the Control key until I get to the guide and click. Still holding Control, click up here above the chin, and then I'll click to close that off. Now I'll grab my eyedropper tool. We'll just go with the same color here and shift click to get rid of the stroke. Grabbing the select tool again, I'll hit Control D. That's going to duplicate that. I'll click on the duplicate, and we're going to make sure that this comes over here to the guide. So hold Control, zoom in. Remember, this is our rotation center or our flip center. Once that is nice and centered up, I'll hit the H key. And if the H key isn't working for you, you also have an icon up top here to flip. So now I'll shift click on both of these halves and come up to Path, Union, and that will merge these into a single shape. Obviously this doesn't look great right now. There's a few more things we got to do. So I'll grab the rectangle shape. We're going to draw the shirt first. So I'm just going to click and drag with the rectangle shape across. Let's grab the select tool and drag this up a bit. We'll change the color of this to white. Hold Control and use my mouse wheel to zoom out. And we need to have this basically cut off by the shape of her torso and her arms. So I'm going to click on the original here, the original shape, and hit Control D. Then I'll shift click on the rectangle below, and we'll go to Object, Clip, Set. So that will clip everything outside the shoulder area, the arms area. Once I've done that, now you can see everything's blending together, so that's not working. We need to add some shading to this to help things stand out. So I'll shift click on the second portion here, the second object, hit Control D, so that will duplicate these two objects. Let me hit Control Z to undo that. With these two objects still selected, I'll come back over to my fill and stroke. And actually, let me click off of this. I'm going to do these one at a time. So I'll click on the top object, and we'll drag the lightness down to make it slightly darker. And we'll do the same here with the white color, so we'll drag that down. Then I'll shift click on these two, and because this lower shape is already clipped and I want to add a second clipping mask for the shading portion, I'm going to have to create what's called a clipping group. So I'll right click on these two objects and go to Create Clip Group. And now I'll grab my ellipse tool. Let's hold Control and zoom out a bit, and I'm just going to draw an ellipse. And let me change the color of this so I can see it. Grab my selection tool, and I'm just going to adjust this shape to my liking. I do want to make sure the shape goes underneath the chin here, that way we can see the chin in the final product. Then I'll shift click on both the clip group and the shape, and I'll go to Object, Clip, Set Inverse. And you'll see that will clip out that shape, leaving just the shadow area, and now it looks like we have a nice shadow there. So hold Control, zoom in. We need to do the same for the face portion. So I'll shift click on both the face and the ear. I'll hit Control D to duplicate that. We can grab the eyedropper tool and click on the darker color. And then right click and go to Create Clip Group. We'll grab an ellipse tool again, and I'm going to just drag this shape out. Let's change the color. Grab the select tool, move it over. And you can always adjust the shape. And then shift click on both of these objects. Once again, go to Object, Clip, Set Inverse. And now we have shading on the face as well. So let's come back over here to the Layers panel, unhide the hair. We are almost done. Now it's time to add some detail. We're going to add detail to the hair as well as the sunglasses, and we'll finish off by adding some earrings and a background of this. So hold Control, zoom in using the mouse wheel. Let's click back on the hair layer and click on the hair. So I'll hit Control D to duplicate this, and we'll move it. And let's change the color of this. Let's go with the pink color. About right there, and then Control D to duplicate that again. This time we'll go with the lighter purple color. We'll go with about right there. Then I'll click on the original hair, Control D to copy that or to duplicate that. And I'm going to shift click on these two layers here, these two pieces of hair, and we'll go to Object, Clip, Set. So that will clip everything outside that area, and that's just adding a bit of color to the hair. Then I'll hold Control, zoom in. So now let's add a little bit of shine to these glasses. So I'll click on one of these, hold Control, zoom in. I'll use the handle, and actually let me hit Control Z. I have to Control D to duplicate that first. And then using the handle and holding Control and Shift, drag that in. If you're having problems with this snapping, you can always turn off the snapping temporarily. But once we've shrunk down the size of this, we'll come over here to Fill in Stroke, and we're just going to lighten this up, so we'll drag this to the right. And once we have that where we want it, I'll hold Control, zoom in. Let's click to bring up the rotation handles, and then just drag the center point here onto the guide. Hold Control, zoom in for a more precise placement there. And we'll hit Control D to duplicate that, and then H to flip it over. So now we have the shimmer or the shine there on the sunglasses. The last portion here is going to be the earrings for the face. So I'll grab the ellipse tool and just draw a circle, holding the Control and Shift key. So you can make these as small or as large as you want. Grab the select tool, Control D to duplicate that. And I'm just going to drag this over, holding the control key, and I'll place it in about the same location there. Hold control, zoom out. Lastly, what I'll do is come over to the layers. I'm going to hide the image layer. And now let's click to create a new layer. We'll name this background. Hit the enter key. And first, let me just select all of the elements here. If you don't care about having everything grouped together, you can hit Control G. That will group everything, and then you can come over to Align and Distribute, and you can just align this to the center of the page. So let's come back to the layers, go to the background layer, grab the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. And we'll get rid of this guide. And there's our final composition. But that's it for this tutorial. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, you could check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/daviesmediadesign. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified each time I have a brand new tutorial. You can also check out any of the links to my resources in the description of the video. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.